So good morning, everyone. And today we are gathering here to discuss on the heritage under the threats from disasters on the occasion of World Heritage Day. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Sri Rajendra Ratnu, Executive Director of NIDM, for his support and engagement in organizing this significant event. And I'm delighted to welcome our guest speakers, Dr. Hakeem Samir Hamad Hamdani, Design Director in Tech Kashmir, and Dr. Program Manager at ICCRO in Rome, working in the fields of sustainable urban heritage, disaster, climate risk management, and the post-crisis recovery. A very warm and gracious welcome is extended to the conveners of the today's webinar, Dr. Amir Khan, Head RID and IDM, and Sri Amiir, Chairman, Indian Building Congress, J&K Chapter. Your presence and your guidance are truly very significant and to enriching this event. Today's program is a joint collaboration of IGBC and NIDM, and we will look forward to collaborate for similar type of topics in future. So last but not the least, I would like to extend our warm welcome to all the participants who are joining us today to enrich themselves and for making themselves knowledgeable in coming future towards these disasters.
Thank you, 𝗂𝗍𝗂. Thank you, Dr. Amiir Saab. Dr. Amiir Saab is a pillar of support for me and for disaster management. We have been, doing programs jointly for the past many years now. I'm grateful to Dr. Samir Hamdani Saab for agreeing to participate in this webinar as an expert. I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Rohit Jigyasu, despite the fact that he was traveling, he had to go abroad, but despite all those things, he agreed, and we in fact changed the dates a couple of times. So both these speakers were very, very gracious to accept our change of the timing, change of the dates, etc. Well, like 𝗂𝗍𝗂 said, that this is a program that we are organizing for commemorating the World Heritage Day. And the theme this year is Heritage under Threat from Various Disasters. We have particularly mentioned earthquake in our poster, and earthquake disasters, earthquake and other disasters also. At the outset, I would like to thank the Executive Director of NIDM, Sri Rajendra Ratnuji, IAS, and I'm grateful to our President of the Indian Buildings Congress, Engineer 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗂𝗁, for supporting us in this. He will not be able to join us because he's traveling right now. We are joined today by various members, and I think they'll be joining throughout as we proceed further. We have engineers from the Public Works Department. We have engineers from the Rural Engineering Wing of Kashmir and Jammu, members of the Indian Buildings Congress J&K Chapter. We have students and staff from the SSM College of Engineering, 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗏, National Institute of Technology, Srinagar, various polytechnics, particularly the Polytechnic College, Baramulla, and various degree colleges, including Amar Singh College, SP College, etc. Now, usually this day is celebrated or observed on the 18th of April, and it's commemorated as the World Heritage Day. But we have preponed it for certain reasons. And why we feel that there is a lot of relevance to the theme is that at least we as a host organization, we are from Jammu and Kashmir, and we have had our share of multiple disasters, particularly earthquake of 2005. And we have seen not only in the earthquakes, but in other major disasters also, including even fire, that our heritage gets destroyed completely. I remember very recently we had an incident in Dasgir Sahib, a very old heritage building, which I think a few hundreds of years old, which just caught fire, and the entire building, everything that was in there got burnt. But intact, under the guidance of Samir Hamdani Saab, they worked, and they really did a meticulous job, because they had documented all that whatever the heritage was available in that building. and they build it brick by brick, point by point, inch by inch. And today, if you go there and you see that building, you will hardly get a feeling that this building has been burnt and then rebuilt. So it is very important that we take care of our heritage buildings, because tomorrow our children who have not seen all these buildings today, they don't know the history behind it. When they ask us tomorrow, where was this? What did you do as a society to preserve our heritage? All right, we cannot stop earthquakes, we cannot probably stop many of the disasters, but then can we take such preventive measures so that our heritage buildings are made disaster resilient? Well, that is something that I hope we will be talking about. Very briefly about IBC, it's a national organization that has been established in the year 1992, and it serves as a platform for professionals, mostly engineers and experts and various stakeholders who are particularly from the building and the construction sector. And we as IBC are committed to preservation and resilience and adaptive reuse of the heritage structures. Therefore, this topic is very, very close to our heart, and it is one of the mandatory days that the Indian Buildings Congress observes throughout India. So we felt that if we are able to get like we have the best experts who are known for their work in heritage work, and bring them on the stage where they will be talking about their work, and the participants who are experts in their own field, there will be an exchange of ideas, and then the experts can talk about something, and this platform will be something that will spark a meaningful dialogue and will hopefully inspire solutions and encourage integrated efforts for a heritage protection. I'm sure that throughout the day, throughout the next few hours that we are going to talk, the discussions are going to be very, very fruitful. I will not take too long, because our expert 𝗂𝗧𝗍𝗍 is traveling, and he will be speaking, and after that I will request समीर साहब that आप इन डेप्थ बता दीजिएगा जो आप लोगों ने काम किया है. शायद रोहित जी पता नहीं मौजूद रहेंगे क्वेश्चंस लेने के लिए, पर समीर साहब आपसे मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि आप जरूर स्टे बैक कीजिएगा, so that you can respond to all the questions. And I wish the program success, and I'm sure that many more people are going to join us and get benefited from this program. Over to you, 𝗂𝗧𝗍𝗍 ji.
Thank you so much, sir, with your thoughtful remarks. Without further ado, I would like to just brief about Dr. Rohit Jigyasu, Program Manager, Sustainable Urban and Built Heritage Conservation, Disaster and Climate Risk Management and Post-Crisis Recovery Program Unit, ICCRO. Dr. Jigyasu is a conservation architect and risk management expert, currently serving as a program manager at ICCROM, focusing on sustainable urban heritage, disaster and climate risk management. He has previously held academic and leadership roles, including UNESCO Chair Professor at 𝗬𝗓𝗏 University, Kyoto, and a President of ICOMS India at 𝗂𝗏𝗍𝗏𝗏. With extensive experience working with UNESCO, UNDRR, and the World Bank, he has led post-disaster assessments across Asia and contributed to the key global publications, including the UNESCO's Climate Action Policy for World Heritage 2023 and the Manuals on Disaster Risk Management of Cultural Heritage. With this, I would like to invite you, sir, once again to deliver your presentation. Over to you, sir.
To the organizers, very nice to see old friends, and I'll quickly share my screen and start my presentation. Let's see. Okay. I hope you can see the screen. Okay, perfect. Sure. All right. So, well, I have just targeted my presentation about key challenges and opportunities in the area of disaster risk management for cultural heritage site. At the outset, I will say that this is very encouraging that NIDM and INTAC, one representing a key organization responsible for disaster risk management and the other responsible for heritage conservation, have come together to do this webinar. This just shows how important and how much far ahead we have gone in starting this collaboration between two different fields, which many years ago were not really considered as anywhere close to each other. So this is a great opportunity, and I compliment the organizers. Just a brief about 𝗂𝗏𝗯𝗶𝗵, the International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property. It's an intergovernmental organization in 138 member states, I mean the countries, and dedicated to promote the conservation of all forms of heritage. It was in fact established in Delhi in 1956 at the ninth session of UNESCO. 𝗂𝗏𝗯𝗶𝗵 works on the front lines of heritage preservation and has collaborating with scientists, conservators, museum curators, site managers, archivists, researchers, and archaeologists. And we really are engaged with training, information, research, cooperation, and advocacy. 𝗂𝗏𝗯𝗶𝗵 is also the advisory body of the World Heritage Convention besides ICOMOS and IUCN. So it's very timely that on the World Heritage Day we are having this event. Well, we all know about Myanmar earthquake that just unfortunately struck a few weeks ago, and a lot of heritage has been damaged, as you can see here. From pagodas to historic settlements to housing, a lot of heritage has been really destroyed and significantly damaged. We talk about earthquakes, but we should know that earthquakes are not just one-time phenomena. They happen again and again. Just in Myanmar in 2016, I would say 9 years back, there was a major earthquake that destroyed these pagodas in World Heritage Site of Bagan. So you can see that the heritage was damaged not just in this earthquake, but another earthquake that happened in that region a couple of years ago. And a lot of damage to heritage is not because of the earthquake, which we can blame normally, but because of the way we do past restorations or preservation treatments. Sometimes they create the vulnerability. Sometimes additions and alterations done to the monuments are not compatible, and then they make the structures very weak against earthquakes. Well, what we have to keep in mind, as was also mentioned by a very famous heritage conservationist, Bernard Fielden, a couple of decades ago, that we live between two earthquakes. It is important for us that any action that we take after the earthquake becomes preparedness for the next earthquake that is going to happen. And in that case, recovery or reconstruction definitely provides an opportunity to make our heritage less vulnerable to future disasters. Uh, let's uh, let's see some other disasters that have affected heritage. You're all aware of this major wildfire in Los Angeles that destroyed millions of historic homes, besides, of course, damaging a huge natural landscape. So we also know now that climate change is really triggering these kinds of events more than ever before. Just a couple of years ago, wildfires in Hawaii destroyed a historic town of Lahaina, and the World Heritage Site of Parthenon has been at risk from fires a couple of times, the last being in 2021. In India, we also know that many of our World Heritage sites are extremely prone to disasters such as wildfires. And in fact, 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗃, one of the prehistoric sites, is surrounded by forested area, and that in fact sometimes even poses a great threat to the archaeological site, which includes very important paintings inside. Just coming back to earthquakes, Tibet region had faced a major earthquake in China, and then a lot of historic properties were damaged here. Just you can see some of the other examples. This is from Japan, where there was an earthquake last year on 1st January, where many historic properties got damaged. And this is from Morocco, where again a historic town of Marrakesh were very much affected by the earthquake last year. Well, we all know about Turkey and Syria earthquakes that also damaged many heritage buildings. Here you can see a few examples. And in our neighborhood in Nepal, there was major earthquake. We just had 10 years anniversary of that big earthquake that damaged many heritage sites, including the World Heritage Sites in Kathmandu Valley, such as this one in Bhaktapur and also in Kathmandu, Patan, the monument zones. So just few examples. Here you can see the temples before and after the earthquake in Bhaktapur. And when we talk about the damage to heritage, it's very important for us to keep in mind that it's not only monuments or buildings that are affected, but also museums and also intangible heritage. So while we talk about heritage and disasters, it's important to consider that for us, it is critical that we look at the tangible and the intangible, the movable and the immovable, because all of them are really vulnerable to disasters. So here in Nepal earthquake, you can see on the right side, one of the major national museums was damaged, and the building had lots of collections that were trapped, and they became even more at risk because of aftershocks. And then because of the heavy rains, there was even more a threat of these walls collapsing and damaging the collections that were there inside these. Bhutan earthquake, again, I'm just showing some examples from our neighborhood where there has been an earthquake damaging heritage structures. Now, one of the issues that I want to bring here is the challenge in doing damage assessment for historic structures, because our historic structures have a very different kind of construction materials, structure systems. It is not really an engineered construction, so it doesn't follow the principles of engineered buildings. And often the problem is that when we do the damage assessment, the principles that are used are the same as we use for engineered constructions on these heritage buildings, which are non-engineered, and which actually creates a lot of problems. So one of the very important tasks that we have is to prepare a good damage assessment forms that really take into account the specific characteristics of historic buildings. So coming back to India, in Gujarat, as you all know, 2001 had a major earthquake where a lot of heritage was destroyed. But a lot of heritage was destroyed not just by earthquake, but also by those who came in after the earthquake to undertake immediate response, because they didn't know what is heritage and what is not. So here I would like to also emphasize the importance of linking between those who are responsible for managing heritage and the ones who come in to provide emergency response and recovery, which is civic defense organizations, whether they are army or police. Often they don't really have an understanding. So even with all their good intentions, they are not really able to support heritage response when a disaster takes place. Now, moving a little bit further from India, I just want to talk about a major earthquake and tsunami that struck Japan in 2011 and destroyed a lot of heritage. Now, a point that I would like to make here in this case is that when we are talking about disasters and their impact on heritage, it is more and more important that we don't focus on only one hazard. So, when we have earthquakes, there might be tsunamis, there might be landslides. So, when we talk about disaster risk plans, it's critical that we think about multi-hazard perspective. Having a multiple hazard thinking while we prepare for our heritage against disasters is really, really important. And this is becoming even more important when we try to see the interface between disasters and conflicts, disasters and economic downturn, and all the other parameters which sometimes combine together and create much more vulnerable conditions. Well, this is a major landmark, iconic building in Paris, Notre Dame Cathedral. In fact, this has just been reconstructed. Last year, it was opened, and it also shows how our heritage is vulnerable. Now, a point I want to bring here, which is very critical, there was a mention about fires that destroyed a very important historic building in Kashmir, and I want to mention here that many times the damages happen or the fire incidents happen in historic buildings because the restoration work that goes on does not take into account the special considerations of historic buildings. So this was the same that happened here in Notre Dame, that there was a restoration or upgradation going on, but those who were responsible were not aware of what care they have to take, because the wiring is very specific, the wood used, or are all the unique characteristics that make these buildings more vulnerable. So when you do upgradation or restoration, one has to be very, very careful, and there has to be some guidelines in place. So this is just to some few more images. Now, it is another issue that I want to highlight when we talk about disaster risk management for heritages, to consider them uh, a unique feature, which is narrow roads, because many of our historic properties are not easily accessible. So it is not really possible for fire engines to go in as they would go in any modern place. So one has to find out very unique solutions that are tailored to the characteristics of historic buildings or historic cities. For example, in this case in Xi'an, in China, where there were fires in this historic settlement, fire engines could not go in, and so fire kind of spread from one roof to the other because the roofs were all connected to each other. So having a local water supply source, or not relying on big fire trucks, but probably having mobile. Sometimes there have been also very interesting initiatives, and as in Ahmedabad as well, where you could use fire not trucks but actually on bikes that could go in the narrow streets and carry water with them. Even if the water supply is not enough, it is better to be prepared to respond in situations where the accessibility is really not much easier. So this is a couple of years ago, a museum. So I just want to also highlight the importance of really looking into preparedness of our museums against disasters. Now, in this case, there was a huge damage because the you know you what is important is not just to put in place fire prevention equipments, but to regularly maintain them. If we don't maintain them, if we are not able to really have staff which is trained how to use them, then having those fire extinguishers is not going to be enough. So it is important that we prepare disaster plans for our historic buildings, museums, or heritage sites. We have to train those who are managing those institutions, whether the museums or historic sites, because if we don't do that management, disasters will happen and a lot of heritage will get damaged. Well, just want to introduce to you another major disaster in Korea, in Seoul, where this important historic gate got damaged. And I want to also here highlight another issue, which is very important for us. So, fire extinguishers, I mean, this is in the middle of Seoul, so it was very easy for fire engines to come in. But they didn't know how the building is going to burn. So when they saw the smoke and they used some of their extinguishers, there was a lot of smoke, but they thought that the fire has actually been extinguished, but actually it was not. Because of the thick roof, the fire was not visible. So as they went back, suddenly the building exploded. So what becomes very important here is to understand that the deterioration or the damage or the collapse mechanism in historic buildings or historic structures is very different than it is going to be in the new buildings. So when we have fire officers, or we have those responsible for disaster response, they need to also understand how a historic building is going to behave when some disaster takes place, whether due to earthquake, how is it going to collapse. Because that will help them to really tailor their response, even search and rescue, according to the nature of the building. So this is just to highlight that issue. Well, I'm sure you are all aware of massive flooding that happened in Valencia in Spain last year. And you can see that it was also very unprecedented. I want to mention here a very important point, that our urban heritage, I mean our historic cities, are more and more vulnerable to floods, and that is also because of climate change. We have very high frequency and intensity of rainfall, and our historic cities are not really prepared to deal with this heavy frequency of, and not only frequency, but heavy intensity. So there's a lot of water coming in a very short period of time, and the infrastructure is not just able to sustain that. So we have to also prepare our historic cities or historic urban areas to this increase in rainfall. This also implies that we need to have a bit futuristic in our thinking when we talk about disaster risk management. We should prepare now for what kind of flood incidents we are going to expect in another 10, 20, or 50 years, because it's going to increase exponentially, and there's enough data and evidence that points to that trend. I'm just showing you a few examples, even in historic towns and cities in India. Here is Ujjain. Previous one was in Chennai. In our neighborhood again in Bangkok, there have been many more floods, and this is one of the famous archaeological sites that have been exposed to flooding couple of times. Again, going back to Europe, Louvre, very important museum. In fact, this is I want to highlight another major issue which is connected to museums, that many of our collections are actually stored in the basement, and enough consideration or enough care is not given to the risk of flooding when to the collections that are kept in the storage area. So we have to also think about really reorganizing our collections so that they are at less risk of the incidents caused by hazards such as heavy rainfall. Again, going back to our neighborhood in Pakistan, there were huge floods in 2022. Many of our archaeological sites are extremely vulnerable to heavy flooding, not only because their materials are very fragile, but also because the slope of archaeological sites is really because they are dug under the ground. So there's a big tendency of water getting accumulated, and if a good drainage system is not there, water can get stagnated for many weeks. That was the case here in Mohenjo-daro site, where bricks, very fragile brick, sustained a lot of damage because water was accumulated for many weeks and could not be drained out. And so we have to be also thinking about how we plan our infrastructure around our heritage sites so that they are less vulnerable to disasters. So here, just some more examples from globe on different kinds of hazards that are there, and which are, many of them are connected to climate change. They are all hydrometeorological hazards, and how they are actually making our heritage sites more vulnerable. Here in New York, when you had Hurricane Sandy, in fact, a large amount of historic neighborhood was damaged, not because of hurricane, but because of fire that happened following the hurricane, because a lot of historic housing was in wood. And then when electrical wires started to have short circuiting due to heavy winds, a fire, of course, was there. So this is the data that we have in front of us, and we need to prepare our heritage sites from disasters. And here again, in India, in Leh, there have been incidents of cloudbursts, and we have to be careful that many of our environmental conditions are changing very drastically. And for example, Leh is a dry, cold place, and adobe constructions or mud constructions are very good for this environment. But when you have huge amount of water coming in a very short period of time, mud structures really collapse, as you can see here in the cloudburst. So and then these are some of the long term, I would not call them disasters, but disasters will happen eventually in 30, 50 years, when sea level rise is going to inundate a lot of our heritage sites. So I just want to show you this example from the US, an island which is very historic, which has been going through this soil erosion, and historic properties are actually falling down, collapsing because of the increased rate of erosion, which is again enhanced by climate change. So I just want to conclude here, but I want to mention one important aspect which is very important, critical. I mean, for a success of disaster risk management, it is really necessary that heritage professionals and institutions collaborate as much as possible with those who are responsible for disaster risk management. This is now much more a possibility. Sendai framework in 2015 really for the first time mentioned heritage in the policy document, which has actually given a lot of strength to this, to the possibilities of collaboration between the two sides, which often have not been really collaborating before. But I see more and more, as this case, examples where now NDMA has also policies in place which are for, there is a guideline for historic buildings and sites, and there's another guideline for museums. And there have been a couple of workshops as well. So this is a great beginning, but I think we need to put a lot more effort to make some real ground measures implemented on the ground. We have enough policy documents now in place. We have enough professional expertise also, because a lot of capacity building has happened over the last couple of years in Japan, in many other parts of the world. And we need to also build the community of practice of these heritage managers who are trained in disaster risk management. So I will just conclude here, and I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for showing the glimpses of how heritage is being impacted by all these hazards and disasters. So maybe we will try to catch you up for a detailed discussion and to listen from your side, from you, what people are doing, different countries are doing, so that when you are mentioning the things, museums, that Museum of Natural History in Delhi that was burned down when I think you were in SPA, or when we were sitting at ITU office. So the Museum of Natural History was burned down in Delhi. So it's really a precious thing, and I'm not taking much question because I understand the thing, but definitely not today. You have hard press for time, but next time we will catch you up and organize another series of the same thing, to listen what people are doing, different countries are doing to. So this is just the introduction from your side. Yes, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. And yes, there have been a lot of good initiatives been going on, and it will take probably a long more time for me to explain what's going on. Japan has absolutely taken a lead, but there are many countries which are following a big initiatives. Yes, so probably we'll have to go a second round in the future, where we can really talk about some good practices and how we can learn from them.
So how much time do you have for questions?
I can take one or two questions if there are. It's fine.
So let's give this chance to participants. 𝗵𝗂, you may ask these participants to raise one or two questions, and then we may move further.
There is one question.
1 minute. I promise to all the participants that we'll try to catch up with Rohit, and we'll definitely have another series of this to listen what international level we are doing and how countries are progressing on this. 𝗵𝗂.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Rohit, sir, for your comprehensive and very detailed presentations. I request Professor Manzoor, sir, to please type in the chat box so we can just address it to you by Rohit, sir. Please.
Professor,
while if any other participant has any questions, please write it in the chat box. That makes it very easy for the moderator to ask on your behalf.
Yeah, you just read out the question of Professor Manzoor if he has written.
No, sir. He just mentioned that I am having a question, but he hadn't mentioned yet.
So, Professor Manzoor, can you raise your question, please?
Yeah, the work of restoration of heritage structure is usually very long, and in between there happens another damage. What can be the best solution?
And this question has been asked by the Vice Chairman of the Indian Buildings Congress, Mr. 𝗪𝗱𝗱𝗁𝗂
No, this is a very good question, and I would say that the only way one can address this issue is through regular monitoring, because we can, of course, continue with the restoration work, which will take a much longer period of time. But if we can have some regular moments of monitoring what are the risks, and if enough actions are taken to manage those risks, then I think we are more able to reduce disaster risks. So monitoring is really the key, and of course maintenance. So I would say that restoration work can go on, but we have to have enough procedures in place, and we have to have enough monitoring in place, and that will absolutely address this issue.
I think, sir, this is also connected with something that I mentioned during the start. We had a very old shrine here by the name of the 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗂𝗪, and it was made of completely wood, paper mache, and other beautiful things. And it caught fire and got completely gutted. But it had already been documented by Intact well before, and they were able to build it back inch by inch. So that
Right.
is something that is very important. Apart from what you said, apart from monitoring, it is very important that we document our heritage and do it in a proper scientific manner.
This is a very good point you have raised, Amir Saab, because it is not only important to just make drawings, but you have to make drawings in a way that you can rebuild them, because often you have very good drawings, they look beautiful, but you cannot use them to do the recovery and reconstruction. So when we do the documentation, it's very important that we do it properly. But that's very, very important point that you have raised. So I see another question from Professor Ahmed. I'm having two suggestions. We can make Heritage's automatic control of fire and automatic flood information. Yes, of course it is very useful to have these automatic systems in place, but I just want to mention one thing. There have been a lot of experiences where totally relying on automatic systems can be a huge problem, because sometimes those systems don't work. So it is good to have automatic systems, but you have to also have a backup for manual systems in case they don't work, because often when you have disasters, whether they're earthquakes or fires, many of these systems just fail, and electric supply may just be off, and you may not be able to use your automatic systems. So yes, it is important to have these in place, but do complement them with manual means as well. And then I see another one. How structural retrofitting can help in mitigating damage to historic sites. Absolutely, it can help, but there are two things to consider. One is that we have to balance how we do retrofitting to how much values we can keep. Because if we do enough retrofitting, maybe the heritage values are going to be lost. So this is going to be a big issue, and but we have very good examples that show that your structural retrofitting, that is safety consideration, can be very well balanced with your consideration of keeping the values. So you have to find solutions that can somehow enable safety and protection of values. There is no often compromises are required, but we should find some culturally sensitive retrofitting measures. That's one thing that I would like to definitely emphasize here. But yes, retrofitting is going to be very helpful. I also see here restoration of heritage buildings is a major challenge nowadays. Yes, of course it is. But what is necessary is to make sure that you have enough, as was said earlier, documentation in place. It is easily accessible. You have enough trained professionals who can do that restoration. So for example, Samir and his team were trained professionals who could then enable a very good restoration of that damaged historic building. Similarly, in every place you have to have these trained professionals. So there's a lot of need to have enough expertise built up in India on this issue of disaster risk management of heritage, both for preparedness, for emergency response, and also for post-disaster recovery. I think these three different phases require their own needs and their own skill set for heritage buildings. Now, then the next question I see is, how can digital mapping and 3D scanning help in disaster preparedness? It can help a lot because you can actually you can gather much more data and much more information that can be used for designing very good evacuation plans. For example, many of our historic buildings and museums don't even have basic emergency evacuation plans. So you can use this digital mapping and 3D scanning to really make you can easily actually make a simulation of how evacuation should happen. It could be easily interpreted to visitors as well as to the staff, because sometimes technical drawings are not very easily understood, no? But digital drawings with 3D scanning can really give you a very good 3D view, and one can actually make them much more easily, let's say, it can be interpreted easily for visitors, and they can use them. So there are a lot of possibilities, including for recovery, where 3D. In fact, there was a very good research project that was done with 𝗪𝗵 in Ahmedabad, where they use these 3D laser scanning technologies to design a methodology for recovery. In fact, at 𝗂𝗱𝗱𝗶, we collaborated with 𝗪𝗵 couple of years ago, and there is a guidance document which is available, which is something that you can all use, which is how to use 3D technology for post-earthquake recovery. So there are a lot of possibilities there. Okay. Reuse of material is like cement is prohibited, minor new buildings. Yes, of course. Uh, you have to think about what materials you use, because sometimes cement combined with traditional materials will create more problems. And often those who do restoration are not aware of the incompatibility between traditional materials and cement. So, I mean, those things have to be really understood. Considering most of the heritage buildings are timber laced or entirely raised in timber in Kashmir, what additional precautions can be taken to prevent damage due to fire hazards? Well, there are a lot of things one can do, from having proper fire extinguishers in place to training the people to be able to have good communication with fire office. To you, so I would say, don't change the buildings, but prepare yourself well, both at the institutional level, but also by the owners of the houses should be well prepared, because many times we are just relying on the fire office to come and extinguish your fire, but a lot of and initial damage is sustained by historic buildings in the first few moments, so if the owners or those who are living in those historic buildings are more trained, you can actually save a lot of fire incidents to becoming much larger. You can control them at the first instance. So we need to also train the owners of these houses or those who are living in those historic houses. Well, considering okay, so light and sound effects in buildings in heritage buildings after present, yeah, well, that's something that has to be thought through, where you want to put money, either in whether it's important to prioritize on light and sound effects or do some basic disaster preparedness measures. I think prioritization is something that I would like to highlight here without getting into details. Documentation of heritage and restoration following minutest details has been done in Dastagir Sahib Shrine, Srinagar. Okay, that's great. And how did countries like Italy, Nepal, or Egypt respond to disasters affecting heritage sites? These countries are using special techniques. Well, I would say that yes, they are using many special techniques for different types of hazards. But I would say that the most important thing that they have invested in is capacity building. They have trained professionals and staff at the institutional level, and that is the key. And I would really emphasize that you can have very good technology, of course, but considering the vast number of heritage properties that we have in our country, and the often the very important consideration of resources, because we are a developing country, we cannot invest too much higher amount of financial resources. So we have to find some good solutions which are more economically viable, and also where we have enough trained people who can really act in a very quick way when something happens. So I think, well, how many heritage buildings? I don't know. I think all heritage buildings are at threat. There is not a single building that is not at risk. That's why important is to really identify what are those risks and then prepare for them as much as we can in advance. Because once they are lost, they are lost. It's very difficult to bring them back. This is the other issue that I want to say, that when heritage gets damaged, you cannot recover all the values. The originality of that structure will be lost anyways, even if you can build it back as it used to be before. So we have to invest as much as we can in mitigation and preparedness, because response and recovery are of course important, but then we would have already lost a lot of important values of those historic structures. So I think I have taken all the questions, most of them. So thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. And of course, I'm very happy to answer any questions that may be there in the future. And thank you again to NIDM, to Intact J&K for organizing this webinar.
And Interbuilding Congress as well.
Of course. And the local chapter, of course. Thank you so much.
And Rohit, thank you very much for sparing this time. And we are looking forward to have at least another seminar, because questions are still coming. And one of the questions is that what other countries are doing. So
Yes.
requires longer time. So we will have a focused webinar on this topic as well. And with this, I just conclude. And because you are hard pressed for time, so maybe next time we will be better prepared. Yeah.
Sure. And I wanted to just emphasize here that there is a publication which is called Good Practices in Disaster Risk Management for Cultural Heritage. It has been published last year by Routledge. I would strongly advise you, if those who are interested, to see actually good examples of how it is done. There are examples from around the world. You can really look at that publication, and you can get very good ideas on how to actually do practical measures on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your impactful presentation. We will catch you up in future. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Now,
1 or 2 points, 𝗂𝗱𝗏𝗁𝗁, with your permission, please. 1 or 2
yes,
points.
sir. Sure, sir.
I just got a few photographs in my WhatsApp. The principal of the Polytechnic College in Baramulla, they found this topic to be so interesting that they assembled most of their students in the meeting hall, and it is being...
You are muted.
Maybe the network issue, sir.
Yes. So let the Samir Saab, and when Amir Saab is available, we will have his remark, or ask him to share the photograph with us, and then we can show all these things on screen.
Sure, sir. Sure. So, sir, can we, sir, move forward, sir?
Please go ahead with because we are running short.
Okay, sir.
The topic is very hot and requires a lot of attention, and we have to close it by 12:30 because another meeting is slated for me.
Sure, sir. Sure. So, without further delay, I would like to brief about Dr. Hakim Samir Hamdani, Design Director, Intake Kashmir. Dr. Hakim is an architect, conservationist, and an art historian, currently Design Director at Intex Kashmir Chapter, a 2021-2022 𝗂𝗱𝗏𝗶𝗁𝗂 Fellow at MIT. He has conservation projects in Kashmir, including the Mughal Gardens, 𝗪𝗪 Sahib Shrine, Ali Masjid, and 𝗂𝗱𝗮𝗁𝗪. His work focuses on cultural mapping, community engagement, and traditional knowledge systems. He was instrumental in Srinagar's 2021 inclusion in UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. His publications include the Syncretic Traditions of Islamic Religion, Architecture of Kashmir, and his upcoming book Srinagar, A Popular History, releases this fall. He is also a 2023-24 Barakat Trust grantee, and presence is truly instrumental in this significant event, sir, and we will definitely learn to hear from you. And with this, I'd request, sir, to please deliver your presentation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Let me share. Basically, this gives you an idea of earthquakes and other disasters that have struck Kashmir. We also have issues of fire, but most of the fire incidents, depending upon how they've started, are mostly man-made disasters rather than natural disasters. We do have occasional wildfires, which are mostly in the mountain regions, but in the city, and the city has been burnt a couple of times, you don't actually get fire as a natural disaster. It's more or less a man-made disaster. So if you see, there's a huge occurrence of earthquakes and floods, and at least in case of one monument, which I will talk about, we also had an issue of lightning. Now, there are certain, because we are an upper Himalayan mountainous region, there are certain things, natural disasters, we are generally safe for, and these are including your hurricane and typhoons. We don't get it. But we had an issue of a severe windstorm a few years back, which also had a certain amount of damage on our cultural heritage. If you could go to the next slide. This just gives you an idea about the earthquakes, because that was, I think, also the main focus of this event. But the first amount of sort of detailed accounts that we have about earthquakes in Kashmir, they date from the 19th century onwards, and these are mostly European travelogues. If you could go to the next slide. So what you find here, and this is a report which was published in the Lancet, which is a health journal, after the earthquake of 1885. One, it speaks about the recurrence and the severity of the earthquake. Secondly, what it also speaks about is the sort of the resilience of the built fabric of the state. When it speaks upon the damage was directly proportional depending upon how the houses were constructed, and mostly because these are light framed wooden structures, the damage was not that much as would have been expected. If you go to the next slide, this is something we also see in an earlier account of an earthquake. This is again from an earthquake which is from 1844, and again what you find is that repetition of the fact that the vernacular heritage, the built heritage of the region, has more or less in a way sort of performed rather relatively well with the via seismic activity, which speaks about the fact that there is an inherent building knowledge system and a construction practice which has taken into account the fact that this is a seismically prone area. Now, if you could go to the next slide. This is an archival image of the built fabric in Kashmir, and what we have is a account which comes from a Mughal administrator who visited and who ruled over the region in the 15th century, which is again speaking about these 5-story high wooden structures which are very light, and in a way they have been able to sort of perform well with the earthquake the seismic activity. So there are a couple of slides, if you can just sort of run through it, which gives you an idea about the vernacular architecture of the region before I come to the main presentation. So you can just go to the next slide. This is an adobe structure, 4-story adobe structure, again, a timber lace adobe structure, which you would normally not find so many examples even in Kashmir these days. Again, it speaks about how the buildings have evolved, how the building technology and the building craft has evolved, and how it has sort of coped up with the mechanism of a natural disaster. If you could go run through the next couple of slides, just run through them. This is just an idea about the architecture. This is something that was even documented when we are speaking about the building fabric and the building construction system. This is something which we retrospectively call the TARC system. There's nothing like a TARC system historically, but it's a brick frame structure. I mean, like you have a steel frame structure, you have an RCC structure. This is a brick frame structure with a huge amount of timber lacing. You have these massive brick parts. Again, in this case, it's an example of adobe construction. If you go to the next slide, this is an example of an earthquake, a building which I took the picture after the 2005 earthquake in the Uri region. So you can find out it's in the mountainous region. So this was an area which was devastated by the earthquake of 2015. This is a building in a certain amount of dilapidated condition. You can see it's abandoned, no one is living there. But because of the structural quality and the sort of the construction material and the construction technology that was employed, the building was able to withstand the seismic activity at that portion. If you go to the next slide, which is again a certain similar example that we find with the Europeans coming to the region. Again, a simple example of a timber lace structure. This was a building which survived many earthquakes and many floods, but after the 2014 flood, one of the government department declared it as an unsafe building. So there was a huge amount of hue and cry among the public about a heritage building being planned to be demolished. And I can say that we had a flood in, I think, 2014 or 15, and today it's 2025. 10 years later down the period, the building is still surviving and functioning as in bank. So this again brings to fore what Dr. Rohit also raised, is how do you as contemporary engineers look into a historical building system? How do you address it? How do you take into account the way a historical building system, sometimes which may be a non-engineered building system, works, the mechanism through which it works? And you come as an engineer and you're so ready to give this sort of a certificate that the building is unsafe for being habitable. So this is something that happens mostly after a natural disaster. Now, if you could go to the next slide. So this is something that came up in the paper in 2022. So this is after after the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and a huge amount of interest was sort of generated in Kashmir about earthquake. This is also a period wherein we found you could do a sort of a slideshow. Just doing slideshow.
It may not be working. Let's continue like this.
Okay. Anyway, so what happened in 2022? We had almost 13 earthquakes in one single week. And again, this is following upon what was happening in Turkey. So this again generated a certain amount of panic, or you could say anxiety, about how safe Kashmir was. And because we are on a seismically active zone, Kashmir is on zone 5. So there was a good amount of these sort of what do you call warnings about the fact that there is a possibility we might be stuck with a major earthquake, and you can never sort of predict it. So at that point, this was a story that came about, which looked into the vulnerability and also the preparedness of Kashmir and the systems that are in place for taking care of our heritage and generally the built fabric in case of a seismic activity. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So these are basically the warnings that came about. One was the sort of the lack of a response system. Do we have an effective response system that can go into the field in case of an earthquake? Do we have a disaster management team which can take into care of the fact that almost the whole old towns, not only in Srinagar but across Kashmir, in Baramulla, in 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗃, these are all buildings which are maybe 60, 70, 80 years old, sometimes even 100 years back. There is also a question of decay within these buildings. So in case of a natural disaster, how well are we prepared? How well are we prepared in terms of our evacuation plans? How well are we prepared in terms of relief and response? What was also a point that was raised in this debate was the fact that we do understand that historically Kashmir's architecture has behaved well. I mean, the vernacular architecture has behaved well in terms of a seismic activity, but that does not mean that it needs to be replicated in toto, and that also does not mean that it is in a state where it can take care of any further seismic activity. Basically, what we were sort of, and this is something that builders or even engineers, people should realize, what we are interested is in sort of a progressive understanding of the past building systems and how we can carry them forward into the present times. The understanding between the technology and how sustainable these technologies were, rather than repeating in mass what was done in the past. Now, I'm going to give an example of a few buildings that were actually damaged through the course of a natural disaster. If you could go to the next slide. So this is one of the most prominent wooden shrines that we have in Kashmir. It's known as 𝗂𝗱𝗄𝗃. So if you see the building on the picture on the left is the structure as it is today, but on the right you can see the topmost spire was actually burned down. So what happened in 2017, the building got struck by lightning. So you can see at the top, this is the building which is one of the tallest building in the old city. It's around almost 150 feet high from base to the top of the spire, and the spire is basically gilded copper. What you call the kalash, or what we call in the Kashmiri the dastar, the spire. The finial is copper, which is a good metal conductor. So at the top of the tallest building in the city, you have a good metal conductor. So this got struck by lightning, and after the lightning, the whole upper part of the structure was burned down. So because of the fact, and this is again a question of where you have the documentation done, which Amir Sahab also spoke about, because of the fact that we had done extensive documentation of this site, we were able to sort of reconstruct and rebuild this part of this spire in a way and a manner which was reflective of both the original practice and the construction system. If we can go to the next slide. So this is again showing you that at the center we have this one single pole, and this is basically a deodar pole which is almost 50 feet in height. So the top 15 feet of this pole were burned down. This is the central post which is supporting the spire. So we were able to strengthen that top to 15 feet. So the rest is as it is. Nothing was removed. So we had a certain amount of tests done on the charring which was happening there, how well it could behave, and then it was strengthened. The wooden post was strengthened, and then we sort of were able to reconstruct this part of the spar which is on the right. If you can go to the next slide. So this is showing basically on the left, you have that finial, the copper finial, and you can actually make out the place where it was struck by lightning. So there is the discoloration which happened because of it. But then there is also a part of the, what you call the sort of recovery processes. So rather than saying that this is something which has been damaged and you let it go, this very piece, and this is a very heavy piece, this is almost around it is from 1732. This piece was recovered. Then this was again repaired. So the finial that we are using in the building is the same piece that was damaged during the lightning incident. So it was repaired, it was re-gilded, and then we were able to re-erect on the site. But I have an issue here. During the process, because there were multiple state agencies that were involved in the reconstruction, we had proposed that the building be provided with the lightning arrestor, and that arrestor be made a part of the copper spar itself. But the local administration, and that is the power development department, they did not allow us to do it. So normally, if you see, there was a similar incident which happened at Humayun's tomb in Delhi, and then they also redid the finial. So the finial itself has the lightning arrestor inbuilt in it. And we were also proposing the same thing for it, but the government or one of the state agencies, because of whatever reasons, and that again comes to the fore, the notion of how different agencies work together, they did not allow us to happen. This was a time-bound project. We could not wait indefinitely for them. So this is rather striking that this building has been twice struck by lightning, but even today it is without a lightning arrestor. That puts it in threat. So there is always a possibility that you could also, God forbid, have a third incident. If you could go to the next slide. Now, this is another shrine where I was, and my team was sort of a part of the project. This is the 𝗪𝗪𝗏 shrine, and you can see it's 2012. In June 2012, the whole building got burned down. Now, this is one of the best examples of monumental wooden architecture that we had in Kashmir. A huge building with all the decorative arts and crafts that we were having in Kashmir. But because of the fact that we had been able to do in-depth detailed documentation, and that is where you build in the basic building block of protecting your heritage against any disaster, whether it's man-made or natural, we were able to recreate it. So there are a couple of slides which are just showing you the before and after. So this is after the 2012 fire. You can go to the next slide. And this is the same building that has been recreated based upon the original materials, the original motifs, and the original color technology that we're doing. You have another two sort of images. If you can go to the next image also. This again shows you the building, the way it's damaged. And in case you can see, there's this wooden column standing at center. Two wooden columns are standing at the center. I'll come to that later. Come to the next images. So again, we were able to use two of the wooden columns that were basically charged. So normally what happened, during wood, even in case of a heavy fire, the outer 1 or 2 inch of the wood gets charged. The inner core remains more or less in the same condition. The only thing is that you have to say, because of the fire, whether the grains have changed, and because of the change in the grains of the wood, whether the structural behavior of wood is anyway going to sort of get changed. Is it going to be good in tension or in compression, whatever the need be? So that tests were carried on, and two of the wooden posts that were there, we were able to reuse it. Now in the new building, we have been also able to sort of build in a system, different layers of protection. Now the only question is, it's still a wooden building, so it is still susceptible to fire per se. But what we have been able to do is that we have been able to add multiple layers of protection. So the paint here is with the fire retardation. It has a time lag, so it does give you that extra 4 or 5 minutes of safety. Then the entire building is sort of now Every corner and nook has a smoke detector. It has a fire alarm system. It also has other CCTV and other inbuilt programs which can better help you in protecting the built heritage. There was a question which was raised in the initial earlier presentation, which was about the fact that many of these monuments, many of these buildings, at least in Kashmir, they are located in narrow gullies. It's like you have Delhi Chandni Chowk, or you're the inner part of the 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏. There are so many heritage buildings, but in many cases the kuchas and the gullies are so narrow. So what do you do? Where is your first line of protection? So what happened in Kashmir, at least in the capital city, Srinagar, we had these community fire hydrants, which were located at the start of each mohalla. Now, these were something people who have been living in Kashmir, they might have seen them up till 80s. So till 80s, every sort of nukkad or every street corner had a fire hydrant, which was identified. And once a year, it would be made operational. People from the irrigation department or the PHE would come and see. But because of the fact that there has been so much of a raised road level, most of these fire hydrants are no longer visible also. So that is again where you had a certain inbuilt system of protection, a certain level of protection, a layer which has no longer operational. If you can go to the next slide. So this is again the same shrine precinct which is sort of reconstructed. Now in conservation, we always have a way of saying it's better to preserve than to repair, and it's better to repair than to reconstruct. Unfortunately, because of this fire incident, we had to reconstruct it. And that again brings to fore the whole idea about how much under threat our heritage is to disasters, both man-made as well as natural. So in the first case, in case of the the 𝗂𝗱𝗏𝗁, it was a natural disaster. In the second case, it's fire, and though the nature and the source of fire was never discovered, but it's mostly a man-made disaster which then piles on and almost takes the form of a natural disaster. If you can go to the next slide. And you can always tell me if I'm running out of time. So this is the building that we were able to sort of repair after the earthquake in 2010, if I remember it correctly. There was a small minor earthquake, but because of the fact that the building was already in a deteriorated condition, so there was a good amount of structural damage done to the building. So you can actually see there's a tilt in the building. So it's sort of leaning towards one side, and then there are these innumerable amounts of cracks to the building. So a part of the heritage protection is also about securing funds. So this was a building that was repaired through a grant. And if you can go to the next slide. Again, it shows you the sort of the mechanism, the processes through which it was repaired and reconstructed. But then again, the question is of maintenance. And almost 10 or 12 years after the conservation, I had recently gone to the site and I found that because of the lack of the maintenance, the building is again in a bad shape. That also shows about community involvement. How far can a project sustain itself without community involvement? If you can go to the next slide. Now, this is just a part of the process. These, okay, if you can go back to the, next slide, please. You can come to the next slide.
Yeah. This one, sir?
No, next. You can leave it. So this is after we had the flood, and this is a building. You can again see many buildings, and mostly in the city suburbs that were there, especially in areas wherein you had a good amount of commercial value for the properties. After the flood, we found that many of the buildings were converted. So there is a change in the usage because you want to convert the building from a residential into commercial area. And the easiest way is getting a certificate from some engineers who say that the building is now susceptible it's vulnerable. It's no longer safe to live in. The example I gave earlier was of the J&K Bank, which is a building which still functions as a bank even after 10 years after it was given a certificate of being threatened, building under threat. Now, these are some of the buildings that we could not save. So this is one of the residential buildings. It's gone now. If you can come to the next slide.
Yes, sir. It's a request to please pass in your presentation.
Okay, so these are
Yeah,
just,
sure.
you can just run through these slides. So these are basically showing the disaster that happened post flood. So you can go to the next slide. You can again just run through it. again, a historic wall has gone from this part of the city. And what came up, unfortunately, was in concrete. Now, yeah, you can come to the next building, which is the garden. There's also snow in Kashmir, and we get a good amount of snow. So this is the Mughal garden, which is on the tentative UNESCO list. And you find many of the chinars are gone because of untimely snowfall, because of the fact that the trees are in foliage, it's top heavy, and then you get snow, the trees have sort of upturned. So there is also the question of climate, how it's affecting our sort of heritage. You can just run through the next slides if you can. Now, these are basically what you all need. You need a risk assessment and mapping. You need preventive conservation. You need, as I said, community stakeholder engagement, mitigation, insurance and financial preparedness, which does not happen in India still, and integration of technologies. There were some people who were talking about the recent technologies, even AI. Can we use AI in better preparedness for protection of our heritage? And how do we develop protocols which are then effective and actually implemented on site? Just you can run through the next slide. It's something that is available there. Yeah. So these are basically your main tools, which you as a practitioner, which you as a conservationist are interested in. These are the softwares that are available in the market, and these are getting upgraded day by day. So how do you assess your risk? How do you document your heritage? And then how do you arrive at a process and processes by which you can actually safeguard your heritage? You can go to the next slide. So these are basically, again, as someone spoke about the early warning systems. Now, these are something that is also questioned how effective they can be, but these are things that are there in the field of both building construction as well as conservation. Now, the only question is how effectively we can sort of dovetail them. And then there's also the question of inherent, which is that disasters are going to happen. No matter how much you prepare, you can only prepare. But then what is the response kit that you're going to do? What is the salvage kit you're going to use? And how best you are going to basically save each specimen? Like I said, in the 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗏 fire, the entire building was sort of burned down. But then the first task was not reconstructing the building, but basically salvaging motifs, historical artifacts from the building, which you could later on reuse. So I think I'll just end it there in case anyone has a question. We can go there.
I request all the participants to please raise your question in the chat box so that we can directly take it to the guest speaker and he will address it.
Thank you so much, Sameer Saab. It's a wonderful presentation, and you have covered so many aspects of disasters and hazards which are prevailing in the state, and it's really wonderful to have you here. And if the participants have some questions, may please raise your observations.
So I think a few questions are already mentioned here. Maybe Avisha or Vipsha, you could read it out.
So there seems to be a question which is about Adnan, which is having gone through it could come before that major damage in the earthquake. Now, were these fire incidents caused by earthquake? In case of 𝗂𝗱𝗏𝗄𝗏, it was a lightning. It was a natural event. So there was a lightning strike which occurred onto the spire. In case of Dasgir Saab, there was an inquiry. There was an official inquiry by the state, which I think didn't come with any explanation. There are many possibilities of that event. I cannot sort of say that this was the reason or not, but short circuit through a faulty electric conduit somewhere in the building is a possibility. It can't be ruled out. And I would say why? Primarily because you have these major urs or festivals in Kashmir when you put on these fairy lights on the building facade. Now, this is something that is done by a contractor. You get paid 5,000 or 6,000 rupees to make the building look very gaudy and appealing to the public. Most of the connections are faulty, and it's just a jugaad. Their whole arrangement is a jugaad for a couple of days. There is a possibility, and again, I'm very clear, it's a possibility that at least in Dasgir Saab, it could be a electric short circuit, but then that's just a possibility. There was an official inquiry. It didn't actually make anything official about it, so I won't go there.
So there is one
Sameer
question
Saab,
from SSM College that they would like to propose dedicating a group of 10 to 15 volunteers who will take responsibility for the preservation and upkeep of nearby heritage sites, such as the 𝗪𝗲𝗏𝗏 monuments. If there is any way you could provide the students with training, especially on how to protect and preserve the heritage during the natural disasters.
I mean, that's rather a very good initiative if they're able to do it. But 𝗪𝗲𝗏𝗏 per se is a ASI site. It's a part of the ASI, Archaeological Survey of India. So while we could give the training, they need the required permission from ASI. So I'd ask them to get in touch with the superintendent engineer of the Srinagar Circle of ASI, and I think they'd be also very keen on it because this is a site which is very near to the ASI monument, but then they have a certain legal format in how you can sort of go about it. In case they want any training for preservation, they could always touch up our office in Tak in Srinagar. We would be more than happy to provide it, not an issue.
Thank you, sir. I just want to make one note for the participants. There are 22 registrations for the certificates in the Google form. I request rest of the participants to please fill your details for issuance of the certificate. There is one question like from Bhushan Lal Rawal, sir. Please, sir, text it down in the chat box. We will definitely address your question.
Sameer Saab, one query or maybe the clarification. Why that electricity department didn't allow you to put that lightning arrestor in that Anka?
Oh, so the main idea was, I mean, it's not a good way of saying it because the department is there. So they came with a very, I would call it an innovative idea, which is we will put a huge structure, a tower, next to the building. So they're imagining they're going to create a 150 feet tall tower next to the building, which is just like you have these sort of BSNL towers or the cell mobile company tower next to a building, which will act as a lighting arrestor. And then they said that we will increase the height by another 50 feet. So we said we don't need it. One, it's going to visually mar the historical authenticity of the site. You are also looking into the visuals of the site, how you approach the site. Secondly, this is something that can be inbuilt within the structure. There is no technical sort of something that is technically stopping from putting you a lightning arrestor. We are doing the sort of the finial. We are going to take care of it, but you just have to do it because that was their responsibility. The state had given the responsibility of putting an arrestor to the department. Now, you could say, be very cynical and say that this was just a department making use of its authority, or a department contractor somewhere saying, we are going to invest this much, why to put it there? But this is something which is very wrong. And we did raise this issue multiple times. I mean, there have been innumerable amount of letters that I wrote because for us, it's not only a project, it's a part of our combined shared heritage. So the issue is that this should have happened, but unfortunately, then basically there was a certain amount of political disturbance also in the state, and the state sort of closed down. So all means of communication within the state sort of ended up. So you couldn't take it up with authorities. So there was no that sort of a, you could say, face with the interface with the government where we could take it up.
So there is one more question. How do you compare traditional 𝗪𝗲𝗏𝗏 and Tak system of Kashmir with current trend of RCC structures? Do they outplay RCC structures or it is otherwise?
No, I mean, I won't say that one system is going to sort of be better than the other. If you do a RCC system and it is designed well and it is sort of executed well, it's going to be a safe system. Similar is the case with the heritage vernacular system. In case of a vernacular system, and I think this needs to be said, these systems are good. They have been proven through centuries of effects of seismic activity. But in many cases, many of these old buildings are in a bad state of maintenance. If your wooden member, if your main wooden post and beam is rotten, then in case of an earthquake, it's not going to behave in a manner that you want it to behave. So a building system that is historical will perform well only if it's maintained, if there is upkeep, if there is sort of retrofitting, if it's preservation. In case you have a building which is dilapidated, you can't expect it to behave well just because it's historical. That's one thing. But there's one thing more, which is basically, let's say, God forbid, there's an earthquake and there's an RCC building which falls down, and there is a building which is in adobe. There is far more chance that you as or me as the inhabitant of that building will come out safe from a adobe lightweight structure as compared to an RCC structure wherein in case of a collapse, the possibility of retrieving people is not that high. Secondly, what is also important is that in many cases, you as an engineer, you as an architect are going to design a building in a manner that it behaves well in case of a seismic activity. But the actual execution happens at site. So most of the issues are at site, wherein the steel is not done properly, the reinforcement is not done properly. I mean, what is the normal way of masons still in Kashmir? Is that you have an extra piece of saria or reinforcement which is saved there at the site, dal dijiye, and they assume that just by putting another piece of two pieces of reinforcement, it's going to be strong. That is not how RCC behaves. So we have an understanding of traditional building systems. We still don't have a good understanding of how RCC behaves at site wherein you are actually working.
Thank you so much, Sameer Saab. And for the participants, we can take more questions because we are running out of time. And it's a wonderful presentation, Sameer Saab. Thank you so much. Again, I will request you, we will have another, Amit Saab, we need another round on this topic. It's creating a lot of interest.
So this always happens to us when we start something, sir. We always have to have a follow-up because there are so many questions that are generated and we just can't answer it in an hour or so.
We hope we are able to generate a good interest, and some solutions have already been provided to by the experts to the participants. And I think Sidhu Saab has already left.
Sir, Sidhu Saab had to leave for a meeting. He requested, but Mr. 𝗂𝗏𝗍𝗏 has joined, sir.
Next time.
Mr. 𝗂𝗏𝗍𝗏 is the honorary secretary at the national level of the Indian Buildings Congress. And I think Bansal Saab wanted to say a few words.
Hi, I'm 𝗂𝗏𝗍𝗏, former chief engineer from MCD and presently giving my services as honorary secretary of Indian Buildings Congress. Well, first of all, I would start with the topic. It was a very interesting topic, heritage, and something which is close to my heart. Though I have, because I have been associated with many of these projects which are going on in Delhi, at least at the initial stages, like Chandni Chowk and Jama Masjid area. Well, heritage structures, they remind us of our past, or rather I would say glorious past. And many of these structures, like some gigantic structures and wonderfully crafted, who have withstand the rigors of the weather and other things, and still standing beautiful. They connect us to our past and also inspire the younger generation to take inspiration from them to build, come up with similarly beautifully and strong structures. And but many of the heritage structures have been damaged due to neglect, or simply people do not know their heritage value and they just destroy it, or maybe for some personal gains. But it's a very wonderful effort on part of 𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗏 ji and our J&K chapter. I would like to say just a couple of lines for our chapter. This chapter has been formed just a couple of months back, 𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗏 ji. Just a couple of
not
months
a couple
back.
of months, a couple of weeks back, sir.
चलिए, ट्रांजिशन फेज था तो couple of months भी मान लेते हैं. But this has been doing wonderful now, organizing some beautiful talk. This is the first talk I have joined, and I found it very, very interesting and knowledgeable for the participants. My all best wishes for the entire J&K chapter team. And we wish that they continue in the same breath and uphold the go on serving the community at large and IBC also. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
so
Thank
much,
you,
sir.
Council Sir.
Thank you.
Amitabh, can you offer a vote of thanks?
Yeah, sure, sir. So as we embark on this closing of this event, so I thank you all of the panelists who has joined us today for this impactful and very insightful presentations and their deliveries. I thanked all the conveners of this program for being a true beacon behind the success of this program. At last, I would like to thank all the esteemed participants for making this very interactive and active, for their active involvement. Definitely, we will come back with next round of interaction in detail in near future. I request every participants, each and everyone, to please fill the Google form shared in the chat box for the issuance of the certificate. We will definitely mail all the certificates in next 2-3 days. And please stay connected with NIDM through the social media handles for this disaster risk reduction frameworks and such similar type of initiatives, so that you can enhance your knowledge and keep learning through this initiative. Yes, sir, please.
अभिप्सा जी, एक फोटोग्राफ्स मैंने आपको कुछ भेजे थे, वो बच्चों के प्लीज शेयर कर दीजिए.
Okay,
थोड़ी
sir.
उनकी एनकरेजमेंट हो जाएगी.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes.
Show other pictures. Go to next.
Achha, it's not changing.
Show again. Next. Yes, next.
Yes, sir, this much.
Good. So it's wonderful that the Polytechnic team in large number has joined this webinar, and I hope we have benefited with this. So Kashmir is having a lot of heritage and we need to protect it. So this is the challenge with the next generation youngsters. Amir Saab, me, and all professionals like Sameer Ramdani Saab and Rohit Jigyasu. They have played, we have played our own inning. So now baton has to be shifted to the young generation, and they are showing and taking a good interest. So I hope this interest will continue. And with this, we just conclude this webinar. And I, last but not the least, I take this opportunity to thank Avipsha for all efforts made to make this webinar successful.
Thank you so much,
Avipsha is the coordinator for this. She hosted this webinar. She had taken a lot of pains in coordinating with Amir Saab, myself, and managing all those formalities to be completed within NIDM, and developing that poster which has been circulated. And she did almost everything for this. So thank you, big thanks to you, Avipsha, for everything.
Thank you so much.
And she did it very professionally and very nicely. Very nicely.
Yes, she's a big professional.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Amir.
Thank you so much.
As you know, we have been, hearing these dialogues before also. जब double Amir मिल जाते हैं तो program अच्छा हो जाता है. तो इंशाल्लाह मुझे उम्मीद है कि आगे भी अच्छा होगा.
आगे भी इंशाल्लाह होगा.
And I
Don't
hope
worry. We will continue.
I hope people will continue to connect with us. Thank you once again, and thank you everyone once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your guidance and continuous effort for making this event successful.
And last but not least, I'm really grateful to Executive Director NIDM, Rajendra Ratu sir, for accepting the invitation. Generally, we are not hosting webinars of late, but he's kind enough to provide this opportunity to us, accepted our invitation to host this, and all credit goes to, we are working on his behalf. So all credit goes to our Executive Director and the NIDM team. And not only Avipsha and myself are the face of this webinar from NIDM side. So is Amir is the face from IBC side, local chapter. But a big team is working behind off camera as well. So I take this opportunity to thank all of them, including our social media team, Nazia ji and his team, ED Secretariat, and our RID team, Ms. Garima, then Sahil and other colleagues, and other team which is working on earthquake with me in the division for making this year project year for earthquake risk mitigation at national level. Thank you all. We are just concluding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants. Thank you.
And wishing you all the best for your journey as well.
Yeah, and just one more time, I'm repeating what 𝗪𝗂𝗀𝗃 ji said, that, for example, people are watching us live at Baramulla, but maybe only one person would have registered. My request is, please, the Google form that is shared by 𝗪𝗂𝗃, please 𝗪𝗂𝗃 ji link uska ek baar और डाल दीजिएगा. Each participant is requested to please fill up that Google form so that your certificate can be issued. अदरवाइज बारामुल्ला को एक सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाएगी जहां 30-40 बच्चे बैठे थे. सो सिमिलरली ऑल द पार्टिसिपेंट्स, प्लीज फिल अप द गूगल फॉर्म. एंड 𝗪𝗂𝗃 जी, इफ यू हैव द मेल एंड ऑल, उनको भी फॉरवर्ड कर दीजिएगा. ये चलिए, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. थैंक्स अगेन.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, sir.
You just share 𝗪𝗂𝗃's number so that they can be in direct touch, that Baramulla team, so that we can issue the certificates to them.
I will do that. I will do that.
And for queries related to getting registration and all these things.
𝗪𝗂𝗃 जी, ये आप मुझे जरा लिंक व्हाट्सएप कर देना.
I will share it.
जी, ठीक है जी.
चलिए, thank you. Bye from my
Thank you,
side.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.